I wasn't planning on becoming a millionaire before 30, but I also wasn't planning on dying broke in a trailer park behind a Taco Bell, so let's say the news was welcome. The call came on a Monday morning, because of course it did. Life-changing. Calls never come on Fridays when you have the weekend to process. It's always Monday, when your coffee's weak and your soul's weaker. I was in my 3rd week of unemployment, binge-watching serial killer documentaries with my cat, Nietzsche, when my phone rang. "Miss Chandler?" the voice on the other end asked. "This is Mr. Rutledge from Rutledge & Mills, estate attorneys for your late grandmother, Margaret Chandler." My heart hiccuped. Nana was dead. Now, before you get teary-eyed, you should know Nana Margaret was 93, sharp as a tack, and had been telling us she was ready to go since Obama's 2nd term. The only surprising thing was that it took this long. What was surprising was the rest of that call. "You've been named the sole beneficiary of her estate, which includes approximately $1 million in cash assets." I blinked. Nietzsche meowed. "I'm sorry." "What?" "You've inherited $1 million, he repeated, as if I were slow. "Miss Chandler, do you have an email address? I'll forward the documents." And just like that, I went from budgeting ramen noodles to Googling, "Can you buy a lighthouse?" Because why the hell not? It should have been the start of a beautiful new chapter. Emphasis on should have. Cue my mother. Now to paint the proper picture. My mother, Deborah Chandler Winslow, is the kind of woman who wears beige cashmere to grocery stores and calls therapy a phase. She married her 2nd husband, Rick Winslow, a real estate investor with motivational quotes tattooed in his office bathroom. Think Tom Cruise if Tom Cruise sold timeshares in Phoenix? I told her about the inheritance over brunch. She barely let me finish the sentence before she slapped her mimosa on the table and started with the concern. "Do you really think you're ready to manage that kind of money, Grace?" I blinked. "What do you mean, ready? I'm not entering the Space Force. I'm inheriting money." She leaned in, her Botoxed forehead unbothered by emotion. "Honey, you've never even balanced a checkbook. You dropped out of grad school to write screenplays that haven't exactly, let's say, taken off. You still rent." "Yes," I said, "from a landlord who hasn't tried to repossess my soul, so I call that a win." She didn't laugh. Deborah doesn't really do humor unless it's a passive-aggressive Christmas card. By the end of the week, things got weird. I received a modified disbursement plan from the attorneys, something about temporary custodial redirection for financial oversight. That's a fancy way of saying the $1 million? No longer in my account. It had been transferred to Rick Winslow's company. When I called Rutledge, he sounded awkward. "There was a supplemental clause added by your mother, acting as a temporary conservator, stating she would manage the funds until you've demonstrated financial responsibility." "She can't do that," I said, trying not to throw my phone at Nietzsche. "Well, technically she can. You signed the temporary authorization at brunch." My brain did a backflip. "What brunch?" "The brunch at Poppy and Seed last week." "The napkin. The one where she asked you to sign that release for Nana's storage unit?" Oh God. That napkin. The one with the cheesecake smudge. My mother had gotten me to sign over my inheritance on a dessert-stained napkin. And the worst part, Rick didn't even deny it. When I confronted him at their mid-century monstrosity of a house, he was lounging in the sunroom reading Harvard Business Review, drinking cucumber water like he was born with a silver spoon lodged in his esophagus. "It's Just a temporary reallocation, Grace, he said, like I was the unreasonable one. You wouldn't believe how many people your age lose money to crypto scams and, OnlyFans subscriptions. I don't even have OnlyFans, I snapped. Well, you look like someone who might. I didn't know whether to slap him or thank him for the accidental compliment. After the shock wore off and the rage set in, I decided to play along. For now. Because despite what they thought, I wasn't stupid. I knew if I came in swinging, they'd lawyer up faster than a televangelist caught at a strip club. So, I started asking questions. Polite, innocuous, gee whiz, I'm just curious questions. What exactly does Rick's company do anyway? Oh, sweetheart, my mom would say, real estate investment and development, very above board. Translation: flipping moldy condos and avoiding taxes. I started doing my own research. Turns out Rick's company had been fined twice by the IRS and was currently under investigation for misreporting income. One of his previous business partners had mysteriously moved to Belize. Shady doesn't begin to cover it. I even managed to get a copy of the new investment agreement my mother filed with the estate. It said, in lovely legalese, that I would potentially regain control of the money after showing proof of sustainable income and mental stability. In other words, never. Because to them, I was still the flaky screenwriter who once took an improv class and cried after getting heckled by a mime. But that's the thing about assumptions. They're dangerous. Especially when made about someone with a grudge and Wi-Fi. By the end of that week, I knew 3 things. Rick was funneling my inheritance into a multi-use retail complex that didn't exist. My mother had legally loopholed me with the help of an old country club friend who practiced law out of a strip mall. If I didn't act soon, the money would disappear faster than Rick's last 2 interns. I needed a plan, a long game, one that involved trust, revenge, and just a little bit of digital espionage. So I smiled. I called my mother. I thanked her for saving me from myself. I even invited her to brunch. Again. Because if she could screw me over with a napkin, maybe it was time I learned how to turn the tables, preferably with a steak knife in the metaphorical back. That's when I met Lyle. Lyle worked in cybersecurity. We matched on a dating app for people who read terms and conditions for fun. He had a master's in computer science and a fetish for encrypted data. When I told him about my little inheritance issue, he grinned like I'd just offered him state secrets. Let me guess, he said. Your stepdad uses offshore accounts, and your mom still writes down her passwords on sticky notes. Exactly. We started slow, watching from the shadows, tracking Rick's transactions, quietly, documenting every shady wire transfer and LLC he created in Nevada. Meanwhile, I played the good daughter. I visited. I brought wine. I asked Rick for financial advice, like the wide-eyed idiot he thought I was. And every time I left that house, I took something with me. A photo of a document, a recording of a phone call, a digital crumb he didn't even realize he was leaving. Rick never noticed, because Rick believed in 2 things. That women under 30 can't be dangerous, that narcissists are untouchable. Spoiler alert, both are wrong. The last piece of the puzzle came during a dinner party my mother threw for investors, the kind of people who smell like power and imported cheese. Rick bragged about his new project, a tech-focused co-living space for remote workers, which is rich, considering he thinks VPN is a car part. But the real treasure? He left, his laptop open in the study. With Lyle's help and a little USB magic, we cloned his hard drive in under 6 minutes. It had everything. The fake business plans, the Cayman accounts, even emails to his lawyer about preparing for potential backlash if the Chandler girl gets litigious. Oh, I was going to get more than litigious, but not yet. Because a good revenge needs patience, and mine was just getting warmed up. Here's the thing no one ever tells you about revenge. It's a full-time job. You have to wake up early, plan meticulously, and pretend to like people you'd rather set on fire. Fortunately for me, I had $1 million motivation. Rick and my mother were riding high. The fake investment Rick had funneled my inheritance into a non-existent co-living tech hub in upstate New York was now listed on his company's site as a launch success, complete with stock photos of smiling millennials holding lattes in exposed brick lounges. Meanwhile, the actual land was a defunct dairy farm with 3 goats and a rusted-out tractor. But you know what Rick was investing in? Himself. He leased a new Tesla, booked a couple's retreat to Sedona with my mother, upgraded the backyard with a heated pool and a stupidly large Buddha statue, which I'm 90% sure he thought was feng shui but looked more like a garden gnome with cholesterol. I watched it all happen like it was a reality show, one I wasn't invited to but fully intended to hijack, and I had help. Lyle, the data wizard I'd met online, was all in. We weren't dating, not really, but we were co-conspirators, which is a far more intimate relationship if you ask me. Nothing bonds 2 people faster than breaking into someone's encrypted files over takeout and dark humor. We met twice a week, usually at his place. He had 3 monitors, 2 cats, and a beanbag chair that swallowed my entire body. By our 5th operation, I knew Rick's entire digital history, his shell companies, VPN routing, even the fact that he subscribed to a men's empowerment podcast hosted by a guy who called himself the Alpha Mechanic. Yikes. So, what's the endgame? Lyle asked me one night, scrolling through Rick's transaction logs. I twirled a piece of pad thai on my fork. Total destruction, preferably public. I want the inheritance back. I want his reputation shredded. And I want my mother to choke on her own smugness. He grinned. So, low-key goals. I shrugged. Why aim low when you've already been buried alive? The first move was reputation. Rick's company, Winslow Holdings, was small-time but deeply concerned with appearing big league. They bragged about community partnerships, eco-conscious development, and cutting-edge smart housing. I knew if I could make it look like he was running a scam, the vultures would circle on their own, so I became an intern. Yes, me, Grace Chandler, intern at Winslow Holdings. Well, technically I was Casey Withers, an eager communications major from Michigan State with a passion for brand integrity. I created a fake LinkedIn profile, complete with photos I lifted from a sorority's Instagram and a very convincing blog about ethical real estate. It took 3 days for Rick's HR girl, who looked like she got lost on her way to a yoga retreat, to offer me a remote, unpaid internship. My tasks, social media, press releases, and monitoring Google alerts. In other words, I now had access to his online branding and the power to quietly start setting it on fire. I began subtly, scheduling posts with contradictory data, uploading photos with accidental typos. Then I made a fake community complaint site and populated it with residents warning people not to invest in the Winslow Dream Complex. My son got sick from the mold in the basement, one said. The apartment had no windows and smelled like cat pee, another warned. Soon enough, Investors started pulling out. Rick panicked. I know, because Lyle hacked into his Slack and showed me the frantic messages. Who is posting this garbage? Find out if we were breached. Tell Amanda to monitor Reddit. Damage control now. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on a mozzarella stick. But that was just phase 1. Phase 2 was legal. I knew if I wanted the money back, I couldn't just expose Rick. I needed to corner him, legally, emotionally, financially. So I contacted a real lawyer. Her name was Tanya Reeves, and she looked like a courtroom had raised her. Sharp, brilliant, and with a voice like a switchblade. She'd once sued a tech CEO for accidental public defamation and won $4 million and a Tesla out of it. I explained everything. She didn't blink once. Let me get this straight, Tanya said. Your mother tricked you into signing over your inheritance. Your stepfather funneled the money into a fake project and you want blood, revenge, and restitution. Yes, I said. In that order. She opened a fresh legal pad. Then we're going to sue them both, separately, publicly, and with flair. She filed 2 suits. One civil, against Rick for misappropriation of funds and fraud. The other, a formal complaint to the probate court arguing that I'd been manipulated into signing away my rights under duress. The best part? Tanya knew the judge. Well, she said, I've taken his money in poker. He owes me. Rick found out about the lawsuit on a Thursday morning. I know because he called me at 7:23 a.m., shouting so loud I could hear the spit hitting his phone. You little snake, he hissed. Do you have any idea what you're doing? Funny, I said, sipping coffee. I was just about to ask you the same thing. Then he made the classic villain mistake. He threatened me. If you think you can scare me with this little stunt, you're dead wrong. You want to play dirty? You have no idea what I'm capable of. Oh, Rick, that's where you messed up. Because if I'm anything, it's someone who knows how to weaponize a threat. Lyle and I took that voicemail, cleaned up the audio, and sent it to 2 journalists. One who writes about financial crimes, and another who has a podcast called The Devil Wears Dockers, Corporate Sociopaths in America. It took 48 hours for the first article to drop. Real estate developer accused of inheriting scandal. Did Winslow Holdings pocket $1 million fortune meant for a grieving granddaughter? My phone exploded. My mother was the next to call. She was furious, but in that icy country club way where her voice gets calm and her vowels tighten like a noose. Grace, she said, this has gone too far. I laughed. You mean too far? Like when you convinced me to sign away $1 million on a cheesecake napkin? That was for your own good. Of course. And setting fire to a neighbor's yard is just an aggressive landscaping strategy. You've humiliated us, she whispered. Do you even realize what this is doing to our reputation? Oh, sweetie, I said. We're just getting started. In the background, Lyle was tracking everything. Our folder had grown to include phone records, fake invoices, falsified contractor contracts, and photos of Rick's company credit card being used at a casino in Atlantic City. He'd lost $6,000 at blackjack, which felt karmically satisfying. Tanya scheduled the court hearing for the following month. In the meantime, I kept pushing. I reached out to some of Rick's former business partners. Well, the ones who hadn't fled the country or been indicted. I gathered affidavits, anonymous statements. One even told me Rick had a second phone used just for off-the-record deals. By the time we hit the hearing date, my case wasn't just solid. It was titanium. The day of the court hearing felt like prom for petty people. I wore black. Tanya wore blood-red heels. Lyle sat in the back like a proud hacker dad. Rick showed up with a lawyer who looked like a melted candle and tried to argue that I had signed willingly and posed an emotional liability. My mother sat beside him, stiff, silent, and visibly regretting every life choice that led her here. But the best part? The judge, good old poker debt Judge Martinez, took one look at the napkin and chuckled. "You're telling me you transferred $1 million inheritance because she signed this?" he asked, holding up the crumpled thing like it was exhibit ridiculous. "It was legally binding," Rick's lawyer said. "No, it was legally laughable," the judge replied. And then, the bomb. Tanya stood and played Rick's voicemail aloud. The one where he threatened me. The courtroom went dead silent as his voice echoed. "You have no idea what I'm capable of." Yeah, that aged like milk in a sauna. The judge ruled in my favor on both suits. Rick was ordered to return every cent, with interest. He was also reported to the IRS for potential tax fraud, and the state board opened a criminal investigation into his business practices. As for my mother, her name was removed from the estate entirely. Outside the courthouse, she tried to corner me. "Grace," she said, tears finally bubbling. "I never meant for it to go this far. I was trying to protect you." I looked at her like she was a stranger, because in some ways she was. "You weren't protecting me," I said. "You were protecting your lifestyle, and your husband." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't know what it's like to be my age and dependent on a man like Rick." "No," I said. "But I know what it's like to be your daughter and realize you'll sell anyone out to keep your image intact." Then I walked away, because I'd finally figured something out. You don't have to burn bridges when you can blow up the whole damn dock. You probably think the story ends when the judge bangs the gavel, when the villain loses everything and walks away defeated, when the mother sees the light and returns to her daughter with heartfelt apologies. Cue the violins and the teary-eyed hug. Maybe some slow-motion walking on the beach, credits rolling over waves and hope. Yeah. No. That's not how this works. Not in the real world. In the real world, villains don't go quietly. They crawl. They scheme. They come back with lawsuits and fake sob stories like cockroaches you forgot to spray. But guess what? I was ready. After I won the case and reclaimed my $1 million, I did what any rational, traumatized heiress would do. I moved everything to a secure, multi-authenticated trust under my name, with a backup account in Switzerland just in case. Things went full house of cards. Rick? Oh, poor Rick. The startup collapsed. Turns out when you're not stealing from naive stepdaughters, running a co-living space for visionary minds is just an overpriced frat house with startup buzzwords. IRS swooped in, froze his assets, and the investors turned on him like wolves. He tried to pitch a new AI-focused venture within 2 weeks. It flopped. Poetic justice? Almost. But the roaches weren't done yet. About 2 months after the court ruling, I got served again. Another lawsuit. This time, Rick and my mother were suing me. The audacity, I know. They claimed defamation with irreparable damage and invasion of privacy. Apparently, calling your mother and her shady husband thieves in front of a courtroom counts as character assassination. Who knew? Honestly, the only thing Rick's character was assassinated by was his own personality. But sure, let's pretend I'm the villain. I sat in my new condo overlooking the city skyline, sipping an iced coffee that cost more than their combined dignity, and laughed. But not the light giggle kind. No, I mean these people seriously want to die on this hill kind of laugh. Let's rewind a bit. After the first court victory, I didn't just walk away with my million. I walked away with leverage. During discovery, my lawyer dug up a lot more than they expected. Hidden accounts, ghost contractors, forged invoices. Rick had fingers in pies no one knew existed. Offshore accounts, shell companies, hell, even a fake wellness retreat in Arizona that turned out to be a glorified juice cleanse with pyramid. Scheme flavor. We handed that to the feds on a silver platter. You'd think they'd disappear quietly after that. You'd think my mother would reflect on the fact that her daughter just beat her and her con-man husband in court. But no. Apparently, narcissism is stronger than self-preservation. The new lawsuit was weak, paper thin. But I knew their game. Keep me tied up in court, drain my funds with legal fees, drag my name through mud to scare me into settling. They thought I'd break. So I played along. I wore all black to the first hearing. Not business black. I just buried my enemies black. Hair slicked, heels sharp enough to draw blood. My lawyer told me to tone it down. I told her I was just getting started. Rick came in wearing his signature Patagonia vest over a sad button-up. My mother looked like she'd aged 10 years, probably because she realized that I wasn't her doormat anymore. I was the bulldozer. The judge took one look at the case and sighed. This appears to be a retaliatory suit. No kidding, but here's the fun part. They made a mistake. A big one. See, in their effort to prove emotional distress and damage to reputation, they submitted screenshots from my private group chats, social media DMs, even audio from a phone call I had with a friend. Stuff no one outside my circle could have accessed. Stuff that had clearly been hacked. Big yikes. My attorney nearly choked when she saw it. Where did they get this? I had a hunch. I checked my old laptop, the one I left at my mother's house months ago when I visited for Easter. Yep, remote access software, installed by Rick. Probably thought he was being clever. So now, instead of just defending a garbage lawsuit, I had grounds to countersue for cyberstalking, privacy invasion, and drumroll please, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Oh, how the tables turn. We filed a countersuit immediately, and while all this was playing out, I launched my own little side project. I created a blog, anonymously of course, called The Inheritance Chronicles. Just a fun little space where I told fictionalized stories about a girl who was stolen from, gaslit, and underestimated, only to rise like a sarcastic phoenix. Totally fictional. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, purely coincidental. It went viral. Turns out there are a lot of people out there with greedy relatives and scheming step-parents. People who related, who rallied, who shared their own stories. I gained 200,000 followers in 3 weeks. And while I never mentioned names, someone eventually leaked that Rick's shady co-living business bore a very strong resemblance to one in the blog. Whoops. Rick's remaining reputation went up in flames. Then came the final hearing. They were both there. Rick looked like a wilted fern. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. Maybe because I was wearing the same necklace my grandmother had gifted me before she died. The one she told me always to wear when I needed strength. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I let the facts speak. We presented evidence of the hacking, of the surveillance, of the money trail from my inheritance to Rick's now defunct company, and how it funded his Vegas business trips that included 5-star suites and escort services under client entertainment. The judge took 20 minutes in chambers and came back with a ruling so delicious, I still dream about it. Rick and my mother were ordered to pay $750,000 in damages to me, each, separately. He tried to argue he was broke. She tried to cry. The judge didn't care. They were also barred from contacting me ever again, directly or indirectly. A full restraining order. I would have asked for them to be banned from existing in my zip code, but apparently that's not a thing. Fine. I walked out of that courtroom not just with my inheritance intact, but with $1.5 million in bonus compensation and a reputation stronger than ever. I moved to the West Coast, started a podcast, wrote a book. It's called Trust Fund, No Trust. Look for it in your favorite indie bookstore. And Rick? He fled the country after defaulting on the payments. Rumor has it he's in Bali selling mushrooms to crypto bros. Good for him. Hopefully he finds enlightenment in a yurt. My mother, well, she tried to reach out a year later, through a mutual cousin. She was deeply sorry, manipulated, broken. I sent back one message. I'm not your daughter anymore. I'm your karma. Petty? Maybe. Fulfilling? Absolutely. See, people like Rick and my mother don't believe in consequences. They believe in entitlement. They think love is leverage and trust is currency. But I learned. I learned to stop apologizing for protecting myself. I learned that sometimes the best way to reclaim your power isn't by making peace. It's by making them watch you thrive. They took my money. I took their future. Call it revenge. I call it justice with interest.